The children of Israel never walked as God desired for them to walk. They have a history of unbelief. Because of their disobedience, they were not allowed to possess the land as promised to Abraham in God's rest. A promise yet remains that one day all Israel will be saved. Here in Daniel, God set a time limit on their disobedience, commonly referred to as the 70 weeks of Daniel. Notice that these 70 weeks are for both the people and Jerusalem together. The people and Jerusalem will both be cleansed for God's habitation. In rendering Daniel 9:24, the word usually translated weeks is literally units of 7. There are 6 things that will occur at the end of those 70 weeks of disobedience. First, it is to shut up or to stop to end their disobedience. Second is to seal up their sins. Third is to cover their iniquity, so that God can, number 4, bring in everlasting righteousness. 5, to seal, approve both vision and prophet. And finally, 6, to anoint the Holy of Holies. Let's look at these. The following verses highlight that God will put an end to their disobedience, seal up their sins, and cover their iniquity. When will Israel be cleansed, have their land restored, and be the habitation of God? It will happen right after Satan is temporarily removed from causing any more deception. It happens when Christ's kingdom is established on earth. As Daniel stated, following the 70 weeks, everlasting righteousness is brought in. This is the time that the prophets of old have been looking forward to. This is the time when God in Christ will dwell with His people on earth. However, God must still dwell in a temple, since Satan, death, and sin have yet to be dealt with. So the temple that was in heaven, as described in Ezekiel 40-47, comes down from heaven, and God Himself comes and anoints the Holy of Holies with His presence. So once again, these are the 6 things that will occur after the 70 weeks have been completed. But before we can go further, we need to discuss what a week is, or how long is a unit of 7. The word usually translated weeks here is literally units of 7. In Daniel 9:27, the final unit of 7 points to the rule of the Antichrist. In the middle of that week, the temple sacrifices can no longer proceed because he causes an abomination that makes desolate. Here in Daniel chapter 12, Daniel refers to the midweek of Daniel 9:27, defining its length anywhere from 1,290 days to 1,335 days. It is important to note that this is not a fixed unit of time. This reference is the key to the length of a unit of 7. It is a variable period where 1 week or 1 unit of 7 ranges from a maximum of 7.32 years to a minimum of 7.07 years. These 70 units are not continuous, but broken into 3 distinct segments. The first segment consists of 7 units, and then there is a short break. The next segment consists of 62 units, then there is a long break. The last segment, often referred to as the 70th week of Daniel, consists of a single unit of 7. So here are the minimum and maximum values for the three segments based on Daniel chapter 12. Now let's look at the first segment of 7 units of 7. Notice that it is related to the word to restore and the word to build Jerusalem. Those words were the cries of the Jews the day Jerusalem fell and was destroyed. In fact, Jerusalem fell twice to Nebuchadnezzar. The first time was in 597 BC, when the city and the temple were plundered and the leadership deported. The cry in 597 BC was to restore what was removed. Then, in 586 BC, the city and the temple were completely leveled. The cry at that time would be to rebuild Jerusalem. Daniel specifies two distinct words here, the word to restore and the word to build Jerusalem. The first segment covers between 49.5 years to 51.2 years, until an anointed one, the leader. Who is that leader that is directly tied to the restoration and rebuilding of Jerusalem? He was Cyrus II. God calls Cyrus his shepherd, his anointed. So if we use the minimum and maximum values for the 7 weeks and subtract those values from the 2 dates that Jerusalem fell, we end up with Cyrus. The first segment only dealt with the word to restore and the word to build Jerusalem. It had nothing to do with the actual rebuilding of the city itself. That is what this segment focuses on. Notice the word again. Daniel speaks of 2 rebuildings. The second occurs at the end of the second segment, which Daniel said hath been built again. The 62 units of 7 are bounded by 2 distinct instances of the rebuilding of Jerusalem. While Cyrus set in motion the law to rebuild the city, it does not happen until the reign of Artaxerxes I. His reign begins in 465 BC. At maximum value, the 62 units of 7 is 453.5 years. In subtracting that from the beginning of Artaxerxes' reign, we arrive at an outside date of roughly 11 BC, and a date of 27 BC using the minimum value. These dates fall within the reign of Herod the Great. Herod ruled from 37 BC to 4 BC. During his time, he transformed the city of Jerusalem. He not only doubled the area of the Temple Mount, he rebuilt the city proper and its defenses. Again, the broad place had been built again in the rampart. Herod came to power on the heels of the Parthian invasion, fortifying his realm, instituting heavy taxation, and gained a reputation of brutality as, in the distress of the times. Herod completely rebuilt the temple and Jerusalem for his glory. So we see that the 62 weeks begin and end with the rebuilding of the city of Jerusalem, the broad place, and the rampart. Note that the first 69 units are consumed before Jesus' crucifixion. As a quote, then after the 62 units of 7, the anointed one will be cut off, and the city and the holy place are not his. Daniel further wrote, after the cutting off the Messiah, there will be a leader who will come, will destroy the people, and its end with a flood, and until the end, war determined desolations. By 70 AD, Herod's vision the city and the temple are leveled by the Romans, scattering the Jews worldwide, far from their land of inheritance. Since that time until today, this period of time is known as the times of the Gentiles. The Jews will never fully again possess their land or Jerusalem, nor freely worship in the temple until this last segment is engaged. They will not be allowed until the time of the Gentiles have been brought to an end. Then in Daniel 9:27, the last unit of 7 starts when the Jews get it all back through a covenant with the Antichrist. The abomination of desolation will bring a complete destruction of both Jerusalem and the temple, thus ending the 70 weeks of disobedience.